Good afternoon, everybody, and to my distinguished guest, welcome to the panel discussion discussing capacity building and resource challenges that we face across the African continent. As we all know, digital technology is not enough. It's significantly more than the technology that's required. What we require for true adoption, for true digital transformation, speaking to what Mrs. Walton-Jack was talking about, that transformation that we're looking for, we need adoption. And in order to support that adoption, we need to ensure that there are skills in place, that the resources exist across our environments in the countries and across the region to be able to support the adoption of digital transformation. So the challenge that we're going to be discussing in this panel discussion relates to the resourcing, primarily around human resourcing, but beyond that, the resources that are required in order to support the digital transformation and the adoption of that digital transformation across our countries. So thank you very much. So I'm going to start with a general question to all four of the delegates. And really this is an opportunity for the audience to compare and contrast. What do you see that's the same? What do you identify that is different in your respective countries? So I'm going to start initially with the question around technical skills and the lack of technical skills. If you talk specifically about cybersecurity, there is a comment that's been passed a few years ago that if you took every cybersecurity resource in Africa, you could give them a job somewhere else in the world and still not fill the vacancies. So the challenge that we face with skills and resources that are available across cybersecurity, cloud, artificial intelligence, which is coming, data governance, these emerging technologies, there is a significant lack of resource. And building and retaining those skills should be, and most likely is, a national initiative. So what are we identifying in each of our countries? So, Dr. Tafara, I'm going to start with you. If you can give some guidance, your thoughts on what you are seeing in Zimbabwe around the skills, how you're building those skills, and what challenges you're facing around that.
Thank you very much for that opening remark, and I would want to thank the audience for the opportunity that has been afforded us to explain the Zimbabwean story. Where we are coming from is, I could say, we have learned a lot of lessons. We started digitalization around 2014. That's when we acquired our first national data center. Did it work for us? Explicitly, I would say we have learned the hard way. It did not. Why did it not? It's because where we started from the deep end, without necessarily having accounted for the kind of technical expertise that we had in government. And therefore, we wanted to be like any other emerging economy. We wanted to be ahead in terms of technology, but we were not ready on the ground in terms of capacity and capability to manage that critical national asset. So, if I look back and reflect on it, it was man put it to waste. So we have learned the hard way. Very important also from those hard lessons, we have learned that it is important for countries to push digitalization informed by national aspirations, not because country B is doing it or country C has done it, and therefore we want to be like them. What are those national development ethos that we want to develop? And you onboard your citizens with it. So therefore the issue of capacity building stems not only from the need to develop capacity within government itself, but also to inform the kind of citizenry that you want. So you have to co-create solutions and pathways or reform pathways that inform the capabilities that you want to develop within your government, the reason why you are doing digital transformation. To that extent, we've also put in place a series of mechanisms as guided by His Excellency the President. One of the advantages we have had is the political free will to inform our national digitalization agenda. Digitalization per se, in terms of skills assets, there's a lot of movement when you look at the digital space in the area of ICTs. And in our government, what we have tried to do is to say we can't stop the mobility of citizens or even our digital experts in government to move either from one MDA to another, or from MDA to the private sector, or from even across borders. Wherever the talent is, we believe it is still relevant for Zimbabwe, and I will explain why we are saying this. One of the critical areas we have been looking at is to address the issue around what we call, for example, NEETs. NEETs are the youth in Zimbabwe, those that are not in employment, those are not in education, those are not in training. So we've got around 5 million of these. And the government has developed strategically to say, let's have, working with collaborating partners, challenge our public service academies to convert some of them into centers of excellence that can begin, a reset in terms of our skill assets that we need as government. And in so doing, we then create that environment that allows for retraining, re-upskilling of our citizens. Bigger challenge has been around the issues of resistance and mindset change. As you know, in the academia, there's what they call publish or perish principle. We say, as we do national digitalization efforts, there may be casualties along the way. Those who fail to adapt and reskill or upskill in certain areas of competency that inform the national digitalization framework, if you don't live up to the expectation, definitely something will come by your way. I think we have learned the hard way to then say, let's work with those that are able, let's work with those who have done it, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What we need to do going forward is work with those jurisdictions that have done it well. Let's benchmark with our senior brothers in Africa who have done it well, but let's domesticate that which they have learned so that we put it to use back home, so that way we can then put technically what we call leapfrogging, so that we bring our citizens. And one of the critical, maybe by way of closing, is to say one of the challenges why you find the uptake does not go well with the citizen is because it's like a prescription for them and us. You don't prescribe service to citizen. Service is a promise that you made when you were a political party coming up with a political manifesto, and then you were given opportunity to convert those political manifestos into public policy because you were allowed to form a government of the day. Sure. And therefore, when you implement the policies as prescribed by the citizen, this is when you can deliver service. So the service is already prescribed for you. When you then fail to have that alignment or information, I would call it information asymmetry. Asymmetry between citizen and government. What then happens is, because there's that misinformation alignment, you have got a challenge with participation. You have got a challenge with people belonging to it. You have got a challenge with planning. So in the end, you need close alignment in terms of aligning your national aspiration in order to improve service delivery. Because what does service delivery do? It brings government closer to people, and people closer to their government in a manner that is transparent, secure, and more agile.
Fantastic, thank you. I like the alignment of your national initiatives with that definition. Dr. Hatwe, your experience in Uganda?
In Uganda's context, and I would like to take it back about 20 years ago, ICT training was a privilege. It was not a requirement, or it was not mandatory. It was a privilege to get training in ICT. And 10 years it became optional. But through the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance and the government of Uganda, we have made it mandatory from private level education, mandatory, and it is part of the curriculum. So from primary level education. So from primary, secondary, all the way to university, it is mandatory to have ICT within the curriculum, and there are specific areas that the government of Uganda has focused on. As you mentioned, cybersecurity is one of the areas that is being, I would say, if not checked well, could open up gaps for intrusion or risk. Even with our deployment in our day-to-day life, we have now even emphasized on skilling of ICT professionals. In all projects that we are deploying as Government of Uganda, we have emphasized that there should be knowledge transfer. So with the education or the primary and secondary education, but even the job, there's still continuous learning that is applied, and we emphasize that there's a percentage of the budget of any project that is ring-fenced for knowledge transfer and training. That's what we have deployed. Just one more thing that we are doing in the public service sector, we have the ICT cadres, and there has been a deliberate effort to specify and ring-fence specific positions within government across all sectors of government for ICT cadres, and they have stated specific minimum requirements for those ICT cadres to perform their jobs in the best possible way.
Fantastic. I think at that grassroots, it's incredibly valuable that net catches everybody to get at least a minimum understanding of technology. It's an incredibly good initiative.
Exactly.
Bonga, in Eswatini?
Yes, I think our situation is similar, especially to Uganda. But yeah, what I can say is that these emerging technologies, cybersecurity, AI, they come so quickly, and whilst we are trying to understand them, you find that we lag behind in terms of policy and implementation. So what I can say, what we are doing now, what they are doing to introduce IT skills training at primary, we have already done that. The only challenges we are facing there would be resources in terms of labs for learning and training. But yes, the curriculum we have adopted, IT basic skills at primary levels. We also do train the citizens in public libraries just to keep them abreast. But right now, there's also one thing that we are doing which is quite good in cybersecurity. We have a cyber month. Like right now in October, the whole month, we are creating awareness to the public. We visit schools, we visit public places and teach them about cybersecurity. In terms of the profession, the skills required for the workplace, we're still lagging behind in terms of our institutions. They take some time to introduce new programs, but the universities are trying. We do have those, even on AI, you find that they will provide those certificates, a quick crash course to make you understand the basics, the fundamentals. So those are the interventions that we are doing in Eswatini. And one thing that we have done, which is an intervention, we partnered with the UAE to introduce a coding school for the basic, starting from primary level. So we are targeting about 300,000 in the next 2 years. So that will stimulate that kind of innovation from our young people.
Technology evolves so quickly. I don't think that you should feel that it is a shortcoming, that you're behind. With the rapid pace of evolution of technology, everybody is behind. So take comfort in the fact that we're all in the same boat, that it's an evolution of learning on an ongoing basis. Dr. Salisu, following Mrs. Walton-Jack, you've got a lot to cover, I'm sure, and we'll dig into that a bit. But just from your point of view, from a technical skills in Nigeria, massive population, a lot of resource available to you. What is your experience?
the digital transformation, which is the major center of the conversation here, stems from the policies that emerge as a result of technology disruption. So at any point in time, there will be no situation where some requirements that can guarantee stability and movement within this digital transformation is attained, particularly the aspect of manpower. So Nigeria as a government, early enough we recognize that yes, we need to be deliberate and strategic in ensuring that at any given time we provide for ourselves sufficient, reasonable sufficient manpower that can allow us to manage the evolution or the disruption as it strikes and continue the digital transformation journey. One of it, this thing that we realize that we need to put in place is that we need to have that national talent pipelines that is demand-driven and training capacity is tailored toward the industry requirement or the employer requirement, so that at any point in time we produce a manpower that can occupy those emerging roles, particularly the cybersecurity you mentioned, the clouds and other new domains that can emerge. So we launched the 3 million tech talents as a national programs that brings together training providers, the employers, and the governments to co-design a training requirement that can be taken by these employees with ease, because the graduates that come out of that are given sufficient training that meets those industry requirements. So we succeeded in implementing these things across the entire country, though we started in pilot phase, and we try to ensure that every year we have some KPI that can guarantee producing this manpower, and we work toward seeing that how can they be absorbed after graduating, because beyond training, what next? Another thing we feel like, considering the size and the complexity and the digital divide that exists, we need to guarantee or ensure that we have a blend model of this training provision. So a blend of the online and the physical. Some agencies within the government are putting in place what we call digital economy centers, just to provide access to served and underserved areas, so that at least we provide that coverage, or we achieve that coverage, and also drive inclusion as we do that. So we also ensure that not only training for the sake of training sake, but how quality and credible these training are being provided. So we thought of need to incorporate an aspect of standards and accreditation, so that we can guarantee quality of outcomes and sustainability with credibility of this product, so that the employers who are targeting to absorb these graduates will easily pick them off, because they can see that they acquire the minimum requirement for them to be useful to their services and for them to occupy those high demand roles that are emerging. And we also thinking of how do we see that this absorption is done with ease. So aspect of incentivizing these offtake of these graduates is one of the areas we are putting through under this 3MTT program, so that at least we make sure that we retain the pools of those graduates that produce, and prevent the brain drain, because when you train them and they are not being absorbed, they will be there, the space is there for them to be occupied by the other way. Yeah. So we are not meeting our own national requirement in terms of having sufficient manpower to drive and manage these things. And one important thing we recognize is aspect of collaboration, both within and within the country. You just heard from the head of civil service of the Federation. She talks excellently at length about the transformation journey Nigeria is pushing place. And head of service is strategically championing the digital transformation of the entire country, because they're like the father and mother of all the public institutions there. So from that strategic position, they can easily, or Nigeria can easily drive those capacity buildings that can empower digital transformation journeys and ensure that all the organizations of government in the public sector are well equipped and well prepared in terms of manpower to drive this digital transformation journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Salisu. I really like the skills pipeline. It shows thought into what the future is going to look like. Leadership obviously needs to take into consideration what technical evolution may transpire, and that takes a little bit of witchcraftery maybe, or some in-depth study and knowledge, but being able to build capacity for future requirement is very future thinking. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that, answering the same question, but giving different perspectives from your country. I think it gives the audience a good opportunity to learn from those. So I'm going to ask a couple of country-specific questions, and Dr. Hatweb, I'm going to start with you. Uganda's developed the ICT Skills and Training Action Plan as far back as about 2020, from what I could do research. And the plan included things like funding, getting trainers in place, curricular infrastructure. What do you think your biggest learnings were from that, and what do you think the biggest success was from that program?
Yes, from the program we had to first do a study, an assessment on the ecosystem, on the needs that are required for us to progress and develop that roadmap. And what we observed was challenges, the biggest challenges. Yes, there are financial constraints, and that's not unique to Uganda, but our biggest challenge was on devices, the use of devices, or the accessibility of the devices. We could provide training, knowledge to either the government officials or even the citizens, but for you to ably utilize ICTs, you need devices, and that was a biggest challenge in acquiring them for the population. And what we are now putting in place is a policy, or we're working with the Ministry of Finance, the government of Uganda, to provide efficient or cost-effective devices in terms of accessibility. In Uganda, it's a unique environment where one of the only countries in East Africa where we do not allow importation of second-hand devices. All devices have to come in brand new. While in Kenya and our neighboring countries, they are able to access cheaper devices, fabricated or reconditioned devices. In Uganda, we only have brand new, or access to brand new devices. So we're working with the government to see how we can reduce the taxes on the importation of at least the low-scale devices to make it affordable and accessible for the person on the street or the people whom we're targeting. Secondly, we're also looking at building our ecosystem in terms of manufacturing, assembly and manufacturing. Specifically, we're working with the Ministry of Education to assemble tablets, and these are low-scale, energy-efficient, solar-powered tablets for the learners, especially in the rural area. The model that we're using is a PPP model, where we work with an investor who comes in to build this factory, but also, as I mentioned, knowledge transfer, so to train the population on assembling them and then later on in manufacturing. As we know, most of the devices, actually the precious metals are very accessible in Uganda, in Africa. So we have a lot of components that we can even start manufacturing with. It could be either the shell or even the screen, or any basic component that we can manufacture, we can actually do it in Uganda. So that model is also going to create jobs. So it's not just only solving the challenges of accessibility, but we're trying to solve the challenge of job creation. And that is also targeting the youth, because that's where most of the gaps are.
I think there's always a fine line where you're talking about import duties versus, so it's a loss of revenue versus capacity to build skill, and it's a justification that needs to be done, and those are the hard decisions that government need to make sometimes. So
exactly.
quite an interesting challenge that you're dealing with there.
Sure.
Dr. Tafara, in your opening remarks, you mentioned, and very candidly, which I appreciate, the challenges that you faced in the early days and the learnings that you took from that. You've got the National ITC Policy 2022 to 2027, identifying IT or ICT as a cutting enabler for the national development strategy. But from what has been gathered, there seems to be a lot of isolation within different sectors of government that have their own initiatives or their own agendas or their own programs. How are you as Zimbabwe dealing with a national strategy, that national initiative that you're looking for, and aligning the various agendas and departments in the government?
No, thank you very much for that good observation in terms of our, the silo mentality that is developed over the years in government. That was also another recipe for our failure in terms of measuring, for example, the digital maturity level of our government. Because you then find across the whole scale or spectrum, you would find other departments are better than others in terms of where they are in their aspirations, in terms of their national digitalization aspirations. Challenge with that, there's also a lot of expense that comes associated with it. Why I'm saying this, you find different MDAs, because they are all funded from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, which is the national coffers. Each one is applying for almost replicating what other entities are doing. There's no sharing of information, there's no sharing of infrastructure, there is that silo mentality that each one keeps a repository of information, there's duplication of effort. And therefore, the national leadership decided around 2018, that's when the e-government unit in the Office of the President and Cabinet was then established, which I then lead. It is now this entity that then coordinates the rollout of the national digitalization effort by government as we speak. Now important, so the first I would say, it was the realization that we were going nowhere. And therefore we needed an integrator or a coordinator in government who would then look at the national digitalization initiatives. And so the first was the realization to create the e-government unit, which then now drives the national digitalization effort. Critical is also the national e-government technology entity is coming up with a lot of, we've put our legal principles that allow for that coordination to take across government. Because remember, ministries, departments, and agencies, in our case, are formed through acts of parliament, and they've got mandates that fall under them. And therefore, to that extent, you cannot just go to them and say, oh, so and so, that effort, you can no longer do this act because it's now under e-government. That's not how to do it. We want to lead by example by going through lawful processes that allow us to say we are one government, we are led by one principle, and at the end of the day, what we speak to do as a government is to address the challenge that we face as government, but also to address the mandates as given by our citizens. So one is that coordination. Two, we have come up with what we call the ICT specification standards across government now. Working with the Public Service Commission, which is our government employer, every civil servant, depending on the job function they hold, they have got an ICT device that is prescribed for them for the job specification that they hold in government. You can't just buy willy-nilly because it suits you. You have got to follow the prescription as outlined in the e-government ICT specification standards. So it is our first step towards standardizing ICTs across government by ensuring that as we capacitate civil servants, each one according to the job grade, that is the role they play in the civil service, they've got a prescription or tools of trade which they use to deliver on the day-to-day.
So essentially you're talking about centralization, control, and standardization.
Yes, going forward, even
fantastic.
starting from next year, all acquisition of ICT technologies will be done through e-government technology unit, and we work in government now as what we call the tripartite. The tripartite is the Public Service Commission, who is the employer in government, and Treasury, and the Ministry of Finance, and the Office of the President and Cabinet.
Okay.
So the three constitute what is called a tripartite. So the three of them now, you can no longer have your procurement process approved and supported by Treasury if it has not gone through, I could say, the cauldron of funneling through the e-government to support your acquisitions.
That's a good initiative. Bonga, if I can go across to you, you mentioned the UDC coding program that you guys have initiated with the government of the UAE in public libraries. That's a very interesting initiative. Can you give us a bit more detail on that? How is that progressing, and what successes are you seeing out of that?
Yes, we partnered with the government of the UAE to start this program. Our intention here is to stimulate innovation from the young ones. So because we do provide skills education, but it's general. So with this coding, it is about specialized applications like the coding itself, and then you also have a course on data science. You also have a course on mobile app development. So basically, we are trying to stimulate innovation from the young age to allow this innovation to come out of these young people, so that our ecosystem, because we have identified that we do have talent in country, but there was no support in terms of skills development. So this is an initiative that we believe is going to transform Eswatini in terms of harnessing the local talent. So we've just started it a few months ago, and there's so much interest. The good thing is that it is an online platform, so you just log in, you register. So we have a lot of interest. Currently, just a few months, we have over 20,000 registrations. And it's just a few months to give you the basics. But our plan, once we monitor and see the development, we will then introduce more professional courses on the platform.
Fantastic. Yeah. In the context of Eswatini, 20,000 enrollees in a few months is a significant achievement and something you guys can be very proud of.
Yes, of course. We are just only 1.3 million.
Yeah. Dr. Salisu sitting next to you, I think it's with 347 million population or thereabouts. So, and going to you, Dr. Salisu, you've got a number of initiatives. You've spoken about the 3MTT, 3 million technical trainees. You've also got the DL for all, the digital literacy for all. You've got a number of programs. In a massive population like Nigeria, how do you measure the success of the programs? What KPIs do you put in place? What do you use to measure your success?
You're right, you see, Nigeria is a big country in terms of size and population. I think by projection we are close to 230 million. So definitely it requires a lot of efforts to ensure that at least we keep afloat in terms of requirement of manpower to manage our digital transformation journey. So I mentioned earlier we have the 3MTT, which is a program that is championed by the Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy. So agencies under the ministry, like the National Information Technology Development Agency, where I come from, we feel that we need to augment this effort by the federal ministry. So we came out with what we call the National Digital Literacy Framework, a framework that was co-created under our developmental regulations pillar with all the stakeholders. As I said earlier, we make sure that we come out with a program that is demand-driven and tailored toward the industry requirement. So we succeeded in ensuring that this NDLF framework is being adopted by the federal government. we are happy to announce that it's been accepted and adopted by our Federal Ministry of Education and been captured to be part of the national curricula from the primary up to the national level. And so under that initiative, we come out with the Digital Literacy for All initiative to ensure that at least we cover the corporates. So we run this Digital Literacy for All initiative under three different tracks. We have the informal sector track, we have the educational sector track, and we have the public service workforce track. So all this track you see that is to ensure that at least that inclusion, so that corporate. So let me be specific on the informal sector, where a chunk of the population comes from there, the women, the youth, the vulnerable members of the vulnerable society. So we collaborate with the National Youth Service Corps. It's a program in Nigeria for every high institution graduates has to do the national service for a year. So within that service period, they have what they call community development programs. So through our partnership with the National Youth Service Corps, we provide a train-the-trainer program for what we call digital literacy champions. Because these NYIC corps members are posted across the entire breadth and length of the country, particularly to the rural areas. So where accessibility is not there, where even the capacity to manage, even the accessibility there is low. So these train-the-trainer or the digital literacy champions are trained and assigned those responsibilities and to be supervised by those technical partners which we also register and accredited to be like trainer aggregators sort of. So we assign each of these trainers cluster of these digital literacy champions and giving them target of training, number of training we expect them to have. So we have a portal that we measure their participation, right from the registration of the training, how far you have gone, how many completed. So we have that statistics because some can join, start along, drop, some can join, complete. So we have a window where we capture this feedback. And we also devise a means of reaching out for physical inspections of those. So we sample locations and we form a team between the agency and the training providers to visit those locations and ensure that these DLC champions are really providing the necessary training under the guide of that curricula that is given to them. And we also find means of reaching out to the beneficiaries or the trainees directly through phone calls and other means of channel we can reach out to them to really find out whether they really receive this training and if they really receive this training, to what extent this training is impacting on them. So through these and the feedback we receive via the photos is what we use to measure how far we are going, where we got it right, where we need to retreat. And so far so good, I think we are making progress because on the average we produce a minimum of 90,000 graduates of these DL for all training every quarter. So if you multiply every quarter times 4, you can just figure the statistics. And we set a target ourselves to have reached 75% digital literacy by 2027 and 95% digital literacy by 2030. So I think the speed at which we are moving, we are making progress, and we have the belief that with the number of feedbacks we are getting and also the request for partnership, we are likely going to achieve this set target, particularly the online version, because we have what we call the NIDA digital literacy learning platforms, where we partner with multinational organizations like Coursera, Huawei Model, Cisco, and Oracle's. So those with the minimal terrain skill that can run online self-learning mode, so they can go there, get registered, and run those certifications free of charge up to the level of certification or as far as they can go. So we are making progress, and I believe with the speed as we are going and with support and collaboration with the private sector, we are going to reach that target of 27% or 75% by 2027, hopefully. Fantastic.
It's really an intelligent use of skilled resources by ensuring community service back into the community. It's a very good deployment of the resources. Unfortunately, I do see that we're out of time. A very engaging conversation. I thank you very, very much for your time. I had a parting question, which we're not going to have a time for you to answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, because I think asking the question will spark some thoughts out there. If we have a massive diaspora in Africa, people that have left the continent, and a lot of diaspora return, particularly in Nigeria and Ghana, I see, and Kenya as well. A lot of the diaspora return. And between the diaspora and the international community of business, so the vendors that sell into your country, if you could ask the diaspora and those vendors one ask, please give us whatever that question is. Please give us this because we need this in order to build skill and retain skill. What would that question be? And I challenge you and the audience out there, when you are engaging with the vendors, ask that question. What can you provide to us to allow us to build and retain skills in our country? On that note, unfortunately, I can't ask you for your answers, but if you can take that away and ask the question back to us as industry, how we can assist you going forward. With that, thank you very, very much for your time.